Hello and welcome. My name is Patty Murray and I will be your host for today's Food Safety Tech webinar, Developing an Optimized Operational Performance Culture. Before we begin, let me provide you with some important housekeeping information. If you have any technical difficulties, please try logging off and then logging back in. If this does not work, please contact WebEx support at 1-866-229-3239. Again, that number is 1-866-229-3239. Please feel free to send in your questions for our speakers throughout the event using the Q&A feature. SafetyChain will send you a copy of the slides and a link to the webinar archive by Monday, May 12th. And for privacy reasons, you are able to view your name and the names of the panelists only. You are not able to view the names of the other participants. Now I'll turn things over to Rick Byros, President and Publisher of Food Safety Tech, who will introduce our agenda and speakers. Rick?
Thank you, Patty, and welcome everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, SafetyChain Software, the leading provider of food safety chain management systems that automate, streamline, and improve food safety and quality assurance and on-demand audit readiness. We have an informative agenda for you today, and we'll be covering defining the total operational performance culture, prioritizing safety, quality, yield, and productivity, identifying key performance indicators or KPIs, establishing operational measurements and baselines, creating empowered teams to meet goals, developing effective data gathering and reporting systems, sustaining and continually improving the system, how food safety chain management technology can help, and we'll be having our question and answer section part at the end of the program. Our special guest speaker today is Jeff Chilton, founder and president of Chilton Consulting. For the past 17 years, Jeff has assisted hundreds of food manufacturing firms with developing and enhancing their food safety and quality programs, including helping many clients improve their operational yield and productivity results. Prior to starting Chilton Consulting Group, Jeff worked directly in the food industry as plant manager of 2 large food processing companies, as well as in quality control management positions earlier in his career. Jeff is a certified lead instructor for HACCP workshops through the International HACCP Alliance. Jeff teaches basic and advanced HACCP workshops and implementing SQF seminars throughout the country and on-site for client companies. Jeff will be joined today by Barbara Levin, SafetyChain's Senior Vice President of Marketing and co-founder. I'd like to turn things over to Jeff now.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Rick. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to join us for this webinar. We're excited today to be able to share some information with you about developing operational excellence. And I'd like to take some of the things that we've learned over the course of our career in our consulting company here and share those ideas with you today as well. I started my career in the food industry all the way back in 1981 as an hourly employee in a food processing plant and worked my way through various lead person, supervisor, superintendent level, and then, as Rick mentioned, as a plant manager of 2 different facilities as well. And then over the course of that career, served as a quality assurance manager for 3 years as well. So what I'd like to do is be able to share some of those learnings during that direct experience that I had in the food industry. And then over the course of the last 17 years, as we've helped, again, hundreds of clients through Chilton Consulting Group with their food safety and quality systems and operational management, to be able to share some of those ideas and learnings with you today. And we're going to specifically talk about the system that we developed, which we call our Total Operational Performance System, which we use the TOPS acronym for. So you'll hear the TOPS saying repeatedly, but again, as you hear that, then please keep in mind that does stand for our Total Operational Performance System. And just to share some information with you about that system as we go to the slides. When we talk about the Total Operational Performance System, then please understand what we're talking about is a management system. And it's a management system that prioritizes safety, quality, yield, and productivity. These are 4 key attributes that we're going to address in the top system itself. And what we'd like to do is to be able to maximize the performance of each of those attributes. And when we talk about safety, quality, yield, and productivity, they're not equal attributes. Within the top system itself, then they come in order, and safety comes first. And when we're talking about safety, we're talking about safety of our people and safety of the food products that are being manufactured. And then quality comes second, and then yield is going to come third, and then productivity comes fourth. And one of the key points in the philosophy behind the top system is the fact that a higher priority is never sacrificed. Yes?
Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're not seeing your slides advancing. So if I could ask you to click on the mouse and then hit the arrow key and see that the slide is advancing. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that did work. The down arrow key was not working, but once I clicked on that mouse, it did. So
okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So again, one of the key philosophies behind the top system is the fact that we never want to sacrifice a higher priority for lower priority, and we'll go through a detailed discussion as to why that's important. And we do want to emphasize the fact that all 4 of those attributes are important, but they have to be managed in an integrated system. That's the management system that we want to create. And ultimately, it becomes truly a process control system that generates maximum results for your organization. So let's talk a little bit further about the TOPS culture itself. You know, one of the problems that I had directly when I worked in the food industry with plant management responsibilities, and we often see in numerous client companies as well, is the fact that companies seem to be too departmentalized. We have the quality assurance departments, we have the R&D departments, we have the safety departments, we also have the operations departments. And, you know, too frequently, operations is the company that gets blamed for everything that goes wrong, and that's not necessarily the way that it should be, because operations is absolutely critical to the success of your company. And what I'd like to emphasize during this webinar is the fact that, you know, it's operations that is in total control of the operational environment. So the operations group controls the safety of the employees that report directly to them. It's the operations group that controls the quality of the products that are being manufactured. And it's certainly the operational group that controls the yield and the productivity of the products as they're being manufactured as well. And we need to count on those support departments of quality and safety and R&D just as that, as a support department. Those are not the departments that control those attributes. It's the operations group that controls those attributes. And one of the key philosophies behind this is the fact that operations is in control of all safety, quality, yield, and productivity. And what we should rely on are these support departments to help verify or assure the fact that we're achieving the intended results within the safety and the quality attributes as well. And I want to, again, congratulate everyone in the operations department, because you certainly play an absolutely key role in your organization, and it's imperative for you to be successful, for your organization to be successful as well. And, you know, the additional problem that we see is the fact that, you know, too many companies have a narrow-minded focus on productivity issues only. And I obviously very closely understand the problem with the necessity of getting the product out the door, and that has to be done to be able to meet customer orders and to keep this process going. But the fact is that we can't let our single-minded focus on productivity overrule the importances of safety, quality, and yield as well. So in talking about a solution to this problem between the departmentalized organizations and the overemphasis on the productivity side, is the solution that we like to propose is that, companies need to develop and implement and continually improve an integrated management system that places the proper emphasis on all 4 of those attributes in your operations. And again, safety, quality, yield, and productivity being those 4 attributes. And then the TOPS culture itself is going to be based on a foundation of having measurable objectives for each one of those 4 attributes. Secondly, it's going to be based on having empowered teams, and those teams could consist of both hourly employees and supervisory employees working together to define those goals and to make sure they're meeting those goals as well. The third attribute is the effective measurement and reporting system. So we measure the specific goals that have been set, and we report on our progress towards those goals on a regular basis. And then last being the employee training and the involvement. So we have everyone involved in this process so they understand their role and they're contributing to the success of the TOP system as well. So let's talk a little bit further about the culture. Again, what is the specific culture related to each one of these 4 attributes itself? So let's start with safety. And when we talk about safety, I really like to call it both people safety and food safety. And I know more commonly we refer to a term of workplace safety, and workplace safety is definitely important, but I'd like to help remind everyone the fact that with proper workplace safety, what we're doing is protecting our people, and our people are our most precious asset. So we have to focus on both the safe workplace processes and the safety of our food products first. So our safety comes first because, we value our employees and we do not want anyone to be hurt on the job. We've seen some very unfortunate accidents, both when I worked in the industry and at some client companies as well, where they failed to follow safety procedures, resulting in amputations of various limbs and things such as that. And, it's a very traumatic event for the individual and for the company as well, and we certainly want to put the safety of our people first. And when we talk about what is a people safety culture, a people safety culture is one that results in the employees actually practicing safe work habits in a safe work environment. And, we can train employees all day long, and we can tell them over and over, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But, we have to go further than that. We have to help the employees understand not only what they need to do, but also why they need to do it. And if we help them understand the why portion of it, that's when you gain their commitment to accepting the responsibility to being able to create that safe work environment and practice those safe work habits. And that's what will drive the accidents down and your workers' comp costs down as well. The safety of our products comes first also, because we don't want anyone to become ill, obviously, and certainly not die from any of our products. We've all seen the horrific headlines and the companies that have gone through foodborne illness outbreaks that have resulted in deaths of consumers and illnesses to those consumers, resulting in lawsuits that cost companies millions of dollars. We've all seen the headlines of multi-million-pound recalls as a result of failures in the food safety and quality systems. And we've all seen the horror stories of companies that have been shut down because of these types of problems. So, a failure in both the people or the food safety can have a devastating and just a catastrophic impact on a company itself. So we want to promote a food safety culture that results in each employee understanding every time they touch that food product, they're contributing to the safety of that product or jeopardizing the safety of that product. So we want to make sure that they understand how to handle those products properly, and they're committed to doing so, and that they're following validated procedures that will assure the safety of those products, and that they're working in a sanitary environment as well. So that's the safety culture that we want to focus on first as being most important through the TOP system. The next is the quality culture itself. Quality is the second attribute, and we say that quality comes second because we have to produce products that are consistent quality that meet and exceed our customer expectations. This is what keeps us in business as a company, and it's consistent high-quality products that result in satisfied customers that are going to generate the repeat sales and the growth in the product lines that we all need within our companies itself. So what is a quality culture? You know, a quality culture is one that results in every employee accepting that responsibility for quality. Just like they accept the responsibility for the safety of those food products, they also accept the responsibility for the quality of those products, and they're contributing to the quality of the products. Just as they don't jeopardize the safety of the products, we don't jeopardize the quality of our products as well. So how do we obtain a quality culture? You know, it starts with defined specifications. We have to know in advance and have it in writing exactly how the product should be produced. And once we have that and train the employees to those standards, then we have to have the measurement systems in place to build quality into each step of that process rather than inspect defects out at the final stages itself. All right, let's move on to the yield culture itself. So yield comes third within the top system because there's a greater saving opportunity and greater revenue generating opportunity by maximizing your product yield. If we can maximize our yields, minimize our waste, and minimize our product giveaway as far as the net weight giveaway during packaging processes, that's what will optimize that yield. And if you compare yield to productivity, you know, maximizing the yield offers a greater return on investment than the productivity increases. You know, based on the volume of products that are being produced within your food manufacturing plants, sometimes as little as 0.25% in yield increase or up to 1% or more that you could generate, you know, could have a far greater financial impact on your company than even up to a 5 or 10% productivity increase as well. So we want to be able to maximize the yields on those products. And the effective yield culture is one that results in yield standards. We need to know what the yields of the product should be. We need to measure those yields on a regular basis. We need to measure the waste control. We need to know how much product is going out the back door. I was at a client company recently, and you know, I just saw tote after tote after tote of product that was being thrown away because it didn't meet standards. And that has a huge impact on the yield, and it's just, you know, it's a tragedy to see so much food product being wasted for reasons that can be so easily prevented. So we need to know how much product's being wasted, and we need to have an effective yield reporting system. And again, the yield culture is one that results in all those employees, again, working towards optimizing those yields on each of the products and then minimizing that waste as we go through this process. And then last is the productivity culture that we want to talk about. And productivity does come fourth, and this is really a paradigm shift for a lot of people in operations, and it's hard to think of it that way, but if you think about your total operational management system, then that's why it has to focus on safety, quality, yield, and productivity. We're not saying that productivity is not important, because it is. It's certainly very, very important. But the key points that we want to make within the TOPS philosophy is the fact that safety and quality can't be sacrificed for productivity. You know, so those two things, if we don't sacrifice safety and quality, you know, that's the insurance policy for your company. It reduces your risk of catastrophic events that could occur at your organization, and it reduces the incidental lost customers. That you don't want to lose your customer base because they're not satisfied with quality, which is going to drive your volume down. And it's very hard to be able to make that up with new sales opportunities. So we want to be able to continue that growth. The other point is the fact that yield cannot be sacrificed for productivity, because we want to remember that yield adds more dollars to the bottom line based on the volumes that are being produced in your company itself. So what is a productivity culture? A productivity culture is one that's based on staffing standards. So you need to know how many employees are required in every department and throughout the entire facility to staff the lines and for support positions as well. So we need to have staffing standards. We need to have efficiency standards. So we know on each one of those production lines how much product should be produced based on the capability of that line in terms of indexes per minute or however we're going to measure that process, but we need to know what is the capability, manufacturing capability of the line, and then set those standards based on how much product should be produced in a given day. Then we need to have the line efficiency reporting system in place. So we know on a daily basis, by production line, by shift, what their actual results were as they went through the manufacturing process itself. And then the last one that I have here is total labor recovery. And that's a different term that we used. And that measured, your total labor dollars paid against the total volume produced. So even if your line efficiencies show that you're doing well, if you have a lot of waste or inefficiency in all the support positions, then those numbers would be reflected within that total labor recovery as well. So the effective productivity culture would be one that, again, results in each employee contributing to the maximum efficiency, while at the same time they're protecting the safety and the quality and the yield of the products that are being manufactured. Okay, so what do we measure? So this is the important part that we talk about, determining how do we measure the system and what do we measure itself. So let's talk about some of the TOPS culture metrics, because culture is a pretty ambiguous term in most cases, and it's a difficult thing to be able to measure in some companies, but there's some specific things that we want to take a look at. And first, as we go through some of the next slides, we're going to be talking about the established objectives for safety, quality, yield, and productivity. And for each of those 4 attributes, defining what are the most important measurements that need to be assessed for each of those attributes. And then once we've set up those goals, then optimizing the performance of safety, quality, yield, and productivity. And that's what generates operational excellence, when you can manage all 4 of those attributes and maximize the results for each and every one of them. The other things that we look at often are turnover rates assessments, and we're looking for reductions in those turnover rates. Unfortunately, many manufacturing companies face extremely high turnover rates, and there's lots of reasons for that, but we want to be able to try to reduce that. And if we're operating an effective company with high morale and employee involvement and having individuals involved in these processes and managing the processes with us, then that higher morale creates an environment where you're going to have less turnover. And turnover is extremely important. We work with a lot of customers of suppliers from food manufacturers, and I was speaking with a major corporate food manufacturing company, and they use actually hundreds of vendors to be able to co-pack some of their products. And the gentleman was telling me that one of the most important things they're looking at is the turnover rate. That if they're going back and doing a third-party audit once a year, are you dealing with a new quality assurance manager every time you go back? And that's an indication that there's a problem with the company when you have situations like that. So we need to assess what those turnover rates are, both in management positions and in hourly positions. And if we can create a higher morale and a better work environment, then we can reduce those turnover rates. Other ways to assess these cultures are employee questionnaire assessments, that we can have these types of questionnaires in place to get an idea of exactly what are the employees thinking. And not only that, but what are their suggestions for being able to improve the workplace? That no one knows how to do those jobs better than the hourly employees that are doing them every single day. And if you take time to listen to them, they have excellent ideas to be able to continually improve these processes as well. So we like to use questionnaire assessments to get a baseline to know where they're at, and ideas for suggestions for improvement as well. Other types of culture metrics we look at are continuing education and professional development. So does management have a commitment to grow these individuals in supervisory positions and technical positions, even hourly positions? But do they have a growth path and a strategy? And are you helping them learn more each and every year so they can grow in their career path and grow within your organizations as well? And then the last piece that we're really looking at, and it really starts the process though, is the management commitment and the sponsorship to your system. The question becomes, is our management providing the resources that are necessary to be successful? And those resources could be anything from staffing to capital improvements to training allocations and expense, and a number of things that you would use. But the key is to have management properly sponsoring the top system and providing the resources to be successful, and then ultimately those resources are going to generate return on investment many times greater than the amount that's been invested in it. So beyond the culture, let's move into what do we identify as key performance indicators. And let's start with the first attribute of safety itself. So when we're talking about the KPIs, but we're talking about what are the things that we can measure to assess our performance within these areas. And as we talked about safety, safety addresses both the people or the workplace safety and food safety. So let's start with the people safety side of it. And the first things you can look at are your mod rates, or the experience modification rates itself, to see how high that is, which is also going to have a determination on or impact on your insurance cost. We can look at your actual workers' comp cost. We can look at how many accidents that you've had and how many you're having to report to OSHA on a regular basis. But even as important as the accidents are, there should be a measurement of the near-miss results. How many accidents could have happened? For every one that did happen, were there 10 that could have happened? And if we would have reacted to those 10 properly, could we have prevented the one that became an OSHA recordable type incidents as well? So we'd like to see measurements of those near-miss results. And then we like to see case management lost work days. So if an employee is hurt and they're out of work, how well are we working with them to get them returned to work in a capacity to be able to reduce those days? And then other attributes could even be OSHA fines, which we hope you don't experience, but could certainly have a big impact on your organization. And then your safety audit results, that there should be monthly safety audits that are performed, and we ought to be assessing our continuous improvements of those results. In terms of food safety, the things that we'd like to measure, obviously first and foremost, we like to have no recalls and no foodborne illnesses. So that one should be our primary goal. But beyond that, we should be looking at our audit results. If you're going through a Global Food Safety Initiative audit or a GMP type audit, to look at the results of those audits and corrective actions that have been taken to any deficiencies that have been identified. We should be looking at our internal audit results to make sure that we're having an effective internal audit process in place, and again, generating continuous improvement through it. We should be looking at our pathogen control performance. Are we controlling the pathogens within our products, and then taking the right actions if there's any issues there? And then depending upon the type of processes you have, if you use any antimicrobial interventions, we should be evaluating the effectiveness of those interventions by looking at the log reductions that's being achieved. And then we should be looking at our allergen validation systems. As you all know, allergens are the #1 leading reason for a recall, and we need to look at our validation processes to make sure that we are truly controlling allergens to be able to prevent that. Then as we look at the KPIs for quality and yield, when we look at quality, the specific things that we can measure are obviously the first, number of customer complaints. We could be looking at product returns and what are the cost of those returns to your system, along with the customer credits. One of the most important ones that I like to look at when I'm evaluating a company's quality systems are their non-conforming product incidents. Not only how many incidents have they had, but what's the quantity of volume that's being held for non-conforming product, and what's the cost of the organization by having to either condemn those products or rework or rehandle those products to make them acceptable. Other types of quality attributes or measurements could be sensory evaluations, shelf life results, label verifications, and specification audit results. So there's a number of things that we can look at within the quality attribute itself. And then in terms of yield, we should be looking at our total product yields, from the green weight of what you start with to the finished weight of what you get into the package. What is your total product yield? And then beyond that, where possible, to look at individual process yields at each step of that manufacturing process. So in the event, as an example of a hot dog process, if you were going to have a manufacturing yield from the green weight of the raw material that you started with to how much was stuffed into the casing prior to the cooking process. So what was your manufacturing yield? Then how much shrinkage did you have during that cooking process? And then from the total pounds presented to packaging, how many pounds got into the package? So we're looking at our packaging yields themselves. Looking at shrinkage issues throughout the manufacturing process. Very importantly, looking at product packaging giveaway, that if we're declaring a net weight of 16 ounces, are we getting 16.05 ounces in there? Or are you doing 16.25 ounces or 16.5? But controlling the giveaway of the net product is absolutely essential to maintaining good yields on those products. And then looking at our product waste loss percentage to look at how much product's going out the wrong direction in the back door. And then we move on to the KPIs for the productivity. So with productivity, everyone's familiar with these. So we're looking at our line standards and our efficiencies, the total labor recovery, the department and the line staffing standards, the overhead support staff control, which has to be controlled to prevent that from going out of control. And we have to look at our volume throughput. Are you getting the pounds through the system that you should be? Then looking at the volume standards and the results. And you know, many of these standards are based on your line speed standards or cycles or output per minute based on the capability of the machines that you're utilizing. So those are all the different things that we can measure, and once we define which ones are the important things to measure within your specific company, then we have to set up the operational measurement system and then create the baselines itself. So we would always encourage you to choose the KPIs that are most relevant for your organization that would offer the greatest return on investment, but certainly no less than 3 specific objectives for each of those attributes, and more, possibly up to 5 or 6, but you want to keep it manageable at the same time. And then determine, how do you measure the KPIs? So not only what are we going to measure, but how do we measure that KPI within your organization? And then once we know how we're going to do those things, then take a look at the history if possible to be able to establish a new measurement system, or if there's not a history, then we want to create a new baseline. So let's start measuring it. Before we start any goals or set any goals, let's start measuring that system to see how we're doing and create the baseline for where we should be. And then once the baseline's been established, then we can set a goal for continuous improvement. Okay, so once we have the systems in place, we've got the attributes, we've got the goals themselves, we know how we're going to measure it, then it becomes an implementation issue. And then to be able to roll this process out, what we encourage is to create empowered teams to be able to set and to meet those goals. And these are teams that are comprised of both supervisory and even hourly employees for each of those attributes. So we would recommend you would have a safety team, a quality team, a yield team, and a productivity team, that it could be set up that way. If that doesn't work within an organization, then you could set up departmental teams as well. But we want to train those individuals that are on those teams, and we get them involved. That's when they accept ownership of this system to make it accessible. And then we want to motivate those teams with incentives, and generally non-monetary incentives. It may be the simple pizza party that you throw for a department to celebrate a success, or it could be a t-shirt or a cap printed or a backpack or various type of issues. But we want to motivate those teams to celebrate the successes and to ensure continuous improvement of that process itself. But let the teams themselves set the goals and monitor their improvement performance. That as they do that, that's when they become involved and become successful. Then on top of the individual attribute teams, we would encourage to have a steering committee, a TOPS steering committee, to manage the overall TOPS process itself. And then you could have representatives on that steering committee from each attribute team or each department that's created within the company itself. And then secondly, we really recommend having a TOPS champion position. That, you know, for this system to be successful, everyone does need to be involved and everyone needs to do their part as well. But every system needs a champion, and this is the person who makes sure that it's working successfully, that training gets done, and we look at the results. And generally, in a lot of companies, this would be identified as a continuous improvement manager or process control type manager position as well. But then managing that process with the routine meetings itself. So once we have the system set up, we're measuring it, we have the teams, now we have to start gathering the data in the reporting system. So one of my favorite sayings is, you know, you treasure what you measure, and we have to measure what's important to us. And if you're being measured on that performance, you're going to treasure those results as well. So we decide how to measure the KPIs. Then we determine the frequency of those measurements. Is it going to be on a by line, by shift, by day, or by department? So decide what's appropriate for your organization itself. And then we establish the information gathering system to be able to collect and report the information, which generally feeds through the software systems, often with some input from either industrial engineering or cost accounting departments as well. But there are great software systems, including SafetyChain out there, that helps automate that data collection and reporting process itself. And as you look at these various software solutions, you know, they can control all of these different things, all the way from your supplier conformance to making sure that you're getting specifications and COAs and audits from your vendors, to looking at the processing and the packaging measurements performance for portion control and yield and productivity, looking at the packaging measurements for net weight control and yield control there. And then temperature tracking and receiving and shipping temperatures, trailer inspections. There's lots of things that the software program can do to automate that system and make it work successfully for you. And then once the system's been implemented, then obviously we want to move on to sustaining those systems and then continually improving them as well. So we would want to use our management and our team review meetings to set up on appropriate frequencies to review our results. The teams need to assess those performance and goals. And we can integrate some of the Lean Six Sigma tools and concepts into this as well, especially for problem solving. If we're not achieving the goals the way that we need to, then we could use some of the tools such as the 5 Whys, the 8 Ds, the root cause analysis, fishbone diagrams, Pareto charts. All of those tools are great things to be able to help us identify problems and what we can do to fix those. And then once we achieve those goals, let's raise the bar and set some new goals. And we can do that by evaluating the trend analysis on a regular basis and looking at opportunities for how do we continually get better. So again, the teams would meet on a regular basis, the attribute teams and the steering committee teams, to review the results and identify where we can improve the system. But most importantly, we want to chart and communicate those results. So we want to have graphs that show everyone how well we're doing. It lists the goal, it lists the performance, and we have it posted in the workplace to be able to communicate those results. And that's what gets people involved and gets people excited about achieving their goals themselves. And then where we have issues, then we often can use special project teams and methods to resolve specific problem areas itself. So I know it's a short webinar, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you about this. But in conclusion, I'd just like to say that, again, we don't want to have our blinders on for productivity, and, we don't want to rely just on the safety department and the quality department to control those things. But, for excellence in operational management, we want the operations department and group to be focused on this integrated approach that takes responsibility and generates maximum results for safety, quality, yield, and productivity. And the key to being successful within those areas are the employee training and involvement and communication to be able to cultivate the cultures that we're talking about, and then establishing the proper measurement systems and the communication systems for success and continuous improvement. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to partner with SafetyChain on this webinar, and we're excited about the great products that they offer as well. So at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Barbara, and she'll share information with you about their process as well, and then we'll be opening it up for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That was very, very informative. What we're going to do now is, talk for just a few minutes about how technology, and in specific food safety chain management systems, can help you with this program and managing the program. You'll notice I've taken us out of full screen because this is just going to be about 5 minutes, and then we are going to spend the rest of the webinar having Jeff answer your questions. And I know that we probably have a lot of questions. So you should be able to, right now, in the lower right-hand side of your screen, see a Q&A tab. Simply enter your questions for Jeff or myself there and hit send, and then we'll have those queued up after we get through the next couple of slides. So as Jeff said, there are a lot of different pieces to put in place for this program to be successful, and one of them is technology. A food safety chain management system can help you in many, many areas of the TOPS program. Some of these include automating programs to help ensure safety and quality, that you're meeting your specs and carrying out your programs, managing a GFSI program, helping you be audit ready on demand, providing real-time non-conformance alerts to maximize yield and reduce rework and recalls and rejections. Productivity and efficiencies are inherent in the software system. You'll see how it can help you with continuous improvement, and also having automated data collection so that you've got a central repository of data for trending to see where perhaps more training might be needed, or where you can fine-tune some specs to prevent problems from happening. So the system that we're talking about is an emerging technology that's gaining widespread popularity in the food and beverage industry called Food Safety Chain Management, or an FSCMS. These solutions are designed to help automate, streamline, and improve food safety and quality assurance. These are solutions that really help enforce FSQA along all points of your supply chain for what's coming in, for what you're doing with it, and where it's going next. These systems ensure program workflow and processes and documentation, and create a central repository of data for trending, assessments, reporting, and audit readiness. There's really 5 key benefits here. Being able to make sure that you are complying with all of your programs, whether those are regulatory, whether those are your GFSI programs, internal programs, or your customer safety and quality specifications and attributes, to eliminate many of the manual processes and errors, again, to prevent withdrawals and rejections and recalls, preparing for audits on demand, and all of this ultimately helps you get products out on time, be profitable, and deliver safe products, which protects your market value and brand. Very quickly, how food safety chain management works, there's 4 key areas. When I ask folks that have been in food safety for a very long time what food safety really means to them, I hear this over and over again, that it means saying what you do, doing what you say, making sure that it works, and making sure that it's all documented. And that's what a food safety chain management system is designed to do. If you look at the pieces on number 1, this is about saying what you do, getting your requirements set up. This can be things like your GFSI scheme code, or your regulatory requirements, all of your customer quality attribute specifications, and all of your internal specs and processes. Then it's the plans and data sources that you need for meeting those requirements. These are your forms. These are all the Ps, the SOPs, the GMPs, the GMPs, your CCPs, and your HARP-C preventive controls. Programs like your sanitation programs, all of the documentation and other requirements for your approved vendor programs. Then you've got to look at number 2, doing what you say. So an FSCMS has a workflow engine. You can schedule all tasks. This can be a task that might be making sure metal detectors are calibrated before a line starts up, making sure an outbound COA has been sent as a pre-shipment review to a customer, or it can be getting a document from a supplier. There's automated notifications. So when these tasks are due, emails and texts go to the appropriate folks. Then you've got to make sure that it works. So a heart of an FSCMS is a verification engine, which is looking at every piece of data in real time. If we're talking about weight, it can be taking information directly from a piece of machinery, the weight machinery, for example. And if you're reaching your high or low limits, again, sending out real-time alerts. So the quicker you can get an alert on a non-conformance, the faster you can take a corrective action and implement a preventive action so that you're, again, maximizing your yield and you're preventing problems from going further down the line. The last piece is make sure it's documented. We've all heard the term when it comes to FSMA or all food programs. If it isn't documented, you might as well not have done it. Every piece of data, every requirement, every form, every alert, every CAPA information that's captured perhaps at the field or on a plant floor through a mobile device is time and date stamped and captured in the system, even before and after photos from mobile devices of a before and after, let's say after a corrective action was taken. So this gives you 3 key benefits. Jeff talked a lot about being able to look at trends, see where you might need to do more training. When you've got all of your safety and quality data from all of your processes, your workflows, your forms, your supplier information in one place, you can then do trending if that data is actionable and you can fine-tune for continuous improvement. It helps you be audit ready on demand. And this doesn't mean just being able to, at the click of a mouse on your laptop, do a laptop audit and have all those documents. It's making sure that you're passing your audits because you have all of your programs defined. You're saying what you did. You're showing that you did what you said, and you showed your verification that it worked and your validation or your corrective actions. And peace of mind in knowing that you've done basically everything that you can do to ensure that your programs are being followed, that you're in compliance, and that you've got the data that you need to make sure that you're running your operations as effectively and efficiently as possible, and not having to sacrifice priorities, as Jeff so importantly discussed. You can really think of an FSCMS as a smoke alarm in the cloud. A lot of the systems that are being used today or prior to some of the food safety solutions that we're seeing today were systems that were really reactive. We compare those to the arson investigator. These are systems that help track recalls when there's a problem. Now, that's necessary, of course, but these systems are all about after the problem has already happened. How do you track it? How do you trace it? And FSCMS is all about detecting problems at the earliest point possible so that you can take preventive actions and keep them from going too far down the line. Our FSCMS here at SafetyChain is called SafetyChain for Food, and it's a modular system that helps in 4 key areas: supplier compliance and the paperless management of approved vendor programs, real-time FSQA management, regulatory and GFSA compliance, program automation, as well as audit readiness, and mobile data collection and analysis. This is a single solution. It saves time and money and creates operational efficiencies. It's cloud-based, so it makes it affordable with a lower cost of ownership and provides visibility and transparency and lets everybody in the supply chain work more easily together. That is really what we have to say. We're going to take your questions now. While we're getting some of your questions in, I'm going to give you just a little bit more information. You will get these slides on Monday, but you'll see that when you get the slides, if you'd like more information from SafetyChain, the contact information is here. All of the contact information to get more information on Chilton services is also there. As Patty said earlier, the slides and the recording will come to you via email on Monday. And we've got some other great events that are coming up that you can register for at SafetyChain.com. Next week, we've got a fabulous webinar on creating HACCP excellence. Our FSMA Friday series this month is on FDA access to your records. And on June 5th, we're having a food safety chain management overview and demo so you can see an actual demonstration of the system. We hope that all of you have visited the SafetyChain Supply Chain FSQA Resource Center at Food Safety Tech. You can go to foodsafetytech.com and go to the Resource Center tab. It's the first one there. And there you'll always find interesting articles, strategic white papers, lots of industry news, and assets to help you learn more about supply chain food safety and quality assurance. And with that, we're going to go back to the questions. And Jeff, I've got a question for you from Roger saying, what are the top best practices that you can tell us for implementing the 4 pillars of this TOPS program?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time, Barbara?
What are the top best practices for implementing the 4 main pillars of a TOPS program?
Okay. I think it starts with the management commitment, and obviously it has to begin at the senior management level. And there has to be a senior management commitment to this process and an understanding of what the process itself entails. And once we have that senior management commitment, then it begins a rollout process as it cascades throughout the organization as well. As the rollout process comes beyond the senior management commitment, the second best practice is a training and communication process, and that's where we involve other other individuals within the organization to understand the TOPS system and their involvement in this, and then asking them for their help in achieving those goals. And again, this is where we're moving away from the traditional philosophy of I'm going to train you and tell you what you need to do and you need to go do it. What we're trying to do is move into an empowered culture where we talk about here's what we as an organization need to do, and we need everyone's help and involvement in asking them how can we achieve this, and then helping them understand not only why do we have to do this as a company to grow ourselves and to remain profitable and stay in business, but why do we have to do that? So as we get that question, not just tell them what to do, but why we need it, and once they understand that, then they become committed to that process. So the senior management commitment, the employee training and communication as the process rolls out, and then defining that measurement system would be the key things, and along with setting up the reporting system as we talked about as well.
Great, Jeff. A lot of questions on best practices from different angles. Kristen is asking, what does best in class, for instance, type, amount, what does best in class look like for professional development of hourly employees? Any insight on that?
I think there needs to be a commitment to growing those employees. Employees, need to know that they're important. They need to know that they have a growth path opportunity within your company, so they feel important and they stay with your company to reduce those turnover rates that we talked about. I think in terms of professional development, it's important at all levels, including the hourly employee levels. How do we train them on new topics? How do we increase and enhance their technical skills? And how do we help them grow in their knowledge and skills that they can return to the company, benefits of these types of training programs? So I think, number one, there has to be, a growth strategy for each employee so they know, where can I proceed to? If I'm doing well with this organization and I'm contributing to successful results, where am I going as a next step? I think that's number one. And then secondly, is they're able to achieve those next steps, how do we make them successful within that process? What type of additional training or skills are we providing to those employees, both at an hourly level and at a management level, to enhance their skills and abilities to be able to meet those needs as they move through that process? So I think it takes both. I think it takes a growth path, and then I think it takes a training program and professional development of increasing the skills and knowledge and abilities of those individuals to be able to prepare them to step up as they go through the process. And, that can help the company reduce, recruiting cost and replacement cost of employees significantly. That if you have qualified employees inside the organization that you can promote from within, can save an incredible amount of money versus having to, go through repeated turnover and constantly going to the outside to bring in new positions, both at the hourly and the management levels.
Great. Another question along the lines is saying, in a way, the information presented today seems like a paradigm shift in prioritizing safety, quality, yield, and productivity. How is this paradigm shift best accomplished?
It's not something that happens overnight, obviously, and it's something that takes communication. I mean, that's the key thing, is it takes a lot of communication of reinforcing the importance throughout the organization, and it takes this change in your evaluation processes. That when we've worked with companies going through this process, once we define what are we measuring and how do we measure it, and then we set up these reporting systems in place, a lot of companies have actually changed their compensation programs and bonuses packages and things that create these types of incentives that generate some monetary involvement as well. But between communicating that change on a repetitive basis and cascading it throughout the organization, and then looking at the compensation structures and bonus and how the performance is being set up, is the part that seems to drive the attention and gets everyone involved in the process, and then secondly, generate some incentives for them to be successful and contribute to the success of the process.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, a question from Susan. How should waste be measured?
Waste is one of the most important things to look at in an organization, and it's often an overlooked thing. When you're setting your yield standards, typically a company's building in a specific amount of anticipated process loss throughout each step of that manufacturing process. But in many client companies, we often see that waste is not actually being measured. That no one's, weighing the amount of product that's going out the back door, being thrown away in dumpsters and such. So it's critical as part of the yield process to be able to evaluate the waste control process as well. So that product needs to be separated at least by various types of categories so you know what type of product's being wasted, and there needs to be weights and measurements in place to know what's being sent to an edible or downgraded into a different quality level on a regular basis to be able to look at the impact of that, the cost of quality that's being generated because the product didn't meet specifications. So we have to set up ways to be able to weigh and measure that product that's either being thrown away or downgraded as a result of it. And that's one of the most often overlooked areas that we've seen in companies. And again, I was in a company very recently within the last 2 weeks and just observed, thousands of pounds of products that were just being thrown away simply because it didn't meet a color standard or didn't meet the shape standard and all. And, that kind of impact is huge on a company, to waste the raw material costs that went involved and all of the labor to be able to create that product and then not to be able to get that product out to your customer and meet their demands too. So it's critical that we set up the waste reporting systems with the weights and the measures of product going the wrong direction too.
Barbara?
Oh, I'm sorry, Patty. I had myself on mute. We have quite a few questions that are actually directed to me on the size of company that can use SafetyChain as well as pricing. I'll say just at a high level, because I want to make sure that we can get the rest of these questions for Jeff, that because this is a cloud-based and modular solution, we've got companies that have 10 and 15 million and $20 million in revenue to companies like Dole, which is, $1 billion company and the largest produce company on the planet. So that cost of ownership has a good price point in a cloud solution. When you get the slides on Monday, there'll be a form on there, and you can request pricing. And so we will be happy to call you and get a little bit of information and be able to give you some more specific pricing on that. But thank you for those questions. We're at the top of the hour just about here. We do have some more questions. I'm sure I should have asked you this earlier, Jeff, but do you have another 5 or 10 minutes or so to stay on and see if we can get through some of these questions?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you.
That would be great. I see that a lot of folks are needing to leave. I'm sure that you have other meetings. If you are leaving, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll get this information out to you on Monday, and have a great rest of your day and weekend. And if you're staying, let's get back to some of these questions for Jeff. Sanaz, and I hope that I pronounced your name correctly, is asking, as it relates to personal safety, what BDPs are you aware of that lead to low incident rates amongst temp labor population?
Yeah, I think the training of the temps is a key point, and when I say training, I'm talking about both the initial training that's provided to those temporary employees, either by the temporary staffing agency or the company that's going to utilize those employees. So I think there still has to be an initial communication of the training, both in the company's expectations of setting the culture for a safe work environment and employees to practice safe work practices as well. And then secondly, to have an on-the-job training process to where those employees are trained how to properly complete those jobs and what type of personal protective equipment is necessary when performing the jobs. The third thing that I would add to that is, it's management's responsibility to evaluate these temporary employees when they come in and determine which positions that they should be assigned to within your company. And obviously we shouldn't take a brand new green employee and put them in a high-risk position. So I think in terms of management assignment of those employees, we need to make sure that they've received the initial training, that they are given any on-the-job training that they need to have, that we make sure that they are issued the personal protective equipment that's required and they understand how to use that. And then last, to try to put them on lower risk jobs with a lesser risk of accidents.
There's a question from Danielle, and I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly. Jeff, perhaps you see this, asking what is 8D?
I'm sorry, what is HG?
8, the number 8 and D. The
oh, 8D. 8D is a corrective action process. It's a Lean Six Sigma tool that's used when you have a situation that requires corrective actions, and it's a one-page form, and it has 8 different questions on it. And it kind of takes you through that root cause analysis process to help you identify what caused this problem and what can you do to fix it, and then ultimately what can you do to prevent it from happening again. And the 8D process uses a team itself. So, and then the 8 question on it is celebrating the success of that team once they've done it. So it's a type of root cause analysis and corrective action form that's used. So we've heard of the 5 why process, that if you ask why 5 times, generally you'll get to the root cause of what really caused that problem to occur. 8D is just a different type of Lean Six Sigma tool to be able to go through that root cause analysis process using 8 specific questions to help you come to the right conclusions.
Right, so I think you've begun to answer the next question that we received, which is, does a Lean Sigma process integrate into the TOP system? Sounds like it does, but maybe you can give us a little more.
It certainly does. There's a lot of great tools within the Lean Six Sigma process, and they can definitely integrate into the TOPS process as well. One of the Lean Six Sigma tools is also a 5S process. And a lot of companies have done very well implementing 5S processes, which has helped them to improve their productivity. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure the phone shifted, so I wanted to make sure it didn't get disconnected there for a second. So
there. Jeff, a question from Donald. How do we get operational managers to put proper emphasis on safety and quality and yield rather than just productivity? It's a $6 million one, huh?
Yeah, that's the difficult one, and that is the paradigm shift and the culture shift that's required to be able to properly implement this TOP system. But you know, it's all based on expectations first. That, you know, senior management has to be able to set the expectations that we're going to manage the total process, which includes safety, quality, yield, in addition to productivity. So I think we have to set our expectations. Secondly, we have to continually reinforce that with constant communication. But third, you know, it's the measurement system that's going to keep that process on track. That once you decide what are the KPIs for safety and quality and yield that I'm going to measure as well, and they all of a sudden start looking at the results in those areas just as importantly as they're looking at the results for productivity numbers and line efficiency numbers, then it forces attention to that part of the process. So overall, I think as it's rolled out, then all of those attributes can receive the attention that they need to. And as I mentioned previously, we have seen some clients change some compensation programs specifically related to bonus compensation. So the managers know they have to meet the results in all of those areas, safety, quality, yield, and productivity, to be able to earn performance bonuses throughout the company. And that certainly gets attention too.
Great. Just a few more here. Benjamin is asking, how do I get these technical skills as an individual if top management commitment is absent?
That's a difficult one, and I guess you have to ask yourself the question, am I working for the right company? And I hate to be blunt like that, but you know, you want to work for a company that's committed to you as an individual as well and your growth opportunities. So if you're not in that type of organization, then I think it raises some personal questions about, is that an area that you'd like to have a long-term career path in? But secondly, you know, there's lots of great opportunities for personal growth even outside of employment time. Lots of good webinars that you can continually learn things through, and seminars that you can go to as well. So I would encourage you to continue to grow yourself as an individual, both within your organization professionally, but also outside of that organization personally by reading as much materials that are available that would help you on those desired career paths that you have, and then attending continuing educational webinars or seminars to be able to help you with that would make you a more valuable resource if you do consider changing employers at that time as well, because it gives you more credentials as you go through that process.
I think we got all of the questions. Patty will be sending those to us, and for any reason, if we somehow missed your question, I'll make sure that either Jeff or myself gets back to you with an answer. With that, Jeff, this has been really, really informative. I can't tell you how often we don't get very many questions, and here, we've had to go almost 10 minutes over. So thank you to our audience for this great interaction, very informative. Thank you so much to Food Safety Tech, our host, to Rick and to Patty, and everybody have a fabulous day.
Okay, thank you.